Hey everybody, one and all, and welcome back to BAN-KAST Episode 12, also known as Part 1 of the Season 1, Part 1 of the Thousand Year Blood War Arc Season Finale! Yeah, some of that made sense. Core 1 of the Bleach Thousand Year Blood War Arc is ending now with episodes 12 and 13. They both aired side by side yesterday. I am not going to be covering both episode 12 and 13 today because that's a lot of work. So we're going to cover episode 12 today, and then episode 13 should be out next week. And there was also an announcement on when the next core is going to be released. By the way, I don't know if this is like the Mandela effect or whatever, but I have never heard of the different parts of an anime being called cores. C-O-U-R. I kept seeing that word, like Core 1 of Bleach is ending, Core 2 will be starting then, Core 1 with My Hero Academia Season 6 just ended, Core 2, and I'm like, what the hell is core? C-O-U-R. I've never heard that term before. And I looked it up, and it just means like a certain section or a part of a season of an anime. So it's not a season finale, it's like a mid-season finale. That would be like the comparison in the West. It's a mid-season finale. This is Bleach's mid-season finale, okay? The season will resume in July of 2023, so we have about 7 months. But hey, you know, we Bleach fans, we know what it's like to wait 10 plus years to get new anime material. So I think 7 months, I think we can coast with that. I think we'll be fine. This is also going to be the first episode uploaded on the official BAN-KAST YouTube channel. So, you know, I mean, you have to be there to watch this right now. I mean, unless you're listening to this on Spotify or Google or something, but new BAN-KAST channel on YouTube. Check it out. Anyway, this will be Bleach number 12, Everything But the Rain, June Truth. This is going to be the second portion of the backstory between Ichigo's parents, Masaki and Isshin. What's really funny, and we'll just start back at the beginning here, what's really funny is that the first, like, opener for this episode, like, the first minute or two of the episode is just the rest of 533 before the opening credits even happen. So, we're still in the past. It's about 20 years ago. It's right around, in the manga, this would be in the mid-1980s, in the context of the anime that, I guess, takes place in 2021. This is, like, in 2001 right now, okay? So, whatever. Anyway, Isshin actually returns to the Soul Society. So, the whole incident with the Hollow White, and then you know, Masaki showing up and then him blocking the attack and all that stuff. I don't really know how that exchange ended. If Isshin just, like, got to his feet, like, severely wounded and bleeding, and, you know, he's just like, well, it was nice meeting you, Quincy. I'm gonna head back to the Soul Society now. Pretty sure I got internal bleeding. Alright, I'll see you around. And then he just, like, hobbles through a Senkaimon and goes back to the Soul Society. But he's got his wounds healed. This is, like, I think a couple of days or maybe the next day or whatever after the battle where Isshin has to now give his report. As you can imagine, a lot of the stuff he did in the last episode was not exactly by the book. He pretty much just decided on his own accord to just go to the world of the living without any sort of prior, you know, permission. Possibly without a Gentai Kaijo even placed on him, which is that's a little bit extreme. Like, that could legitimately, like, destroy the world of the living, if or at least a certain portion of it, if not, you know, placed on a captain level Shinigami. But anyway, Yamamoto seems pretty alright with this. He's like, you know, I will overlook the violation of your rules, because at the end of the day, you did, you know, the damage could have been a lot worse. You discovered there was this Hollow going around murdering people. Yeah, 2 Shinigami did die. Actually, no, there was a third one, because there was that other Shinigami I forgot to bring up in the last episode, where he was very dutiful, if nothing else. There was that one other Shinigami that was like, Captain Shiba, Karakura Town is 13th Division territory. You're not allowed to be over here. And he just gets killed by White. And I'm just sitting there like, dude, that guy was really committed. He sees a captain of the 13 squads heading right toward him, and he's like, Captain Shiba, I don't care what your status is. You're not allowed over here in 13th Division territory. My God, the balls on that dude. Anyway, he's dead too. But it could have been worse, and so Yamamoto's like, I will overlook your violation of squad rules. We see the captains from 20 years ago. They're pretty much all the same as they were at the beginning of Bleach in the Soul Society arc. The one thing I will bring up is Mayuri is still sporting the design he wore at the beginning of the story, and if this really is 20 years ago, Mayuri changes his outfits like every other year. So I doubt that Mayuri would still have had this outfit like 20 years prior to when Ichigo and Uryu and Orihime and Chad like break into the Soul Society. Yeah, I doubt that, but you know, whatever, it's fine, it's all cool. Let's see, Gin and Kaname and Aizen are all, of course, still there. Unohana's there. Yeah, there's really no other captains that are off. The only captain that's replaced is Isshin instead of Toshiro. Isshin leaves, and then, you know, Toshiro becomes the new captain. So Yamamoto, though, he's not stupid. He also brings up that, like, your report only described how unusual the Hollow was. Is there anything else that noteworthy that you're leaving out of this report, Captain Shiba? Because, you know, Yamamoto, he's just looking at the report like, an unusual Hollow attacked. I'm like, that's a little strange. And Isshin is just like, well, do I tell them about Masaki? Probably not. Probably shouldn't mention that a Quincy was still alive in the living world and attacked the Hollow, you know, on account of that whole Quincy extermination operation that we conducted about 200 years ago. Probably shouldn't bring that up. Okay, that would have, like, if he would have mentioned Masaki in that meeting, you can guess what Mayuri's first thing, what he was going to do. Mayuri would be like, Quincy, eh? And then he would just go back to his lab, and yeah, you don't want to see what's going to happen after that point. So yeah, probably a good call on Isshin there. We now cut back to the living world here, where we see, you know, the following day we have Masaki in high school, and, you know, she's just there thinking about Isshin. And we see a little bit more of the flashback there. Isshin is really just surprised at the fact that, like, a Quincy is still living in the world of the living, and he's like, man, you know, the courage that it even had for her to, like, try to help a Shinigami. Because you got to imagine, like, from a Quincy's perspective, after that whole incident 200 years ago with the extermination, Quincy's are probably told, like, very explicitly, you know, in their studies, you do not interact with Shinigami at all. Like, you don't. If you see a Shinigami fighting a Hollow, you don't get involved. If the Shinigami gets killed by the Hollow, that's just how it goes. You know what I mean? We don't associate with Shinigami after what they did to our clan. You know what I mean? Like, and we certainly don't help them. That's, like, probably one of the biggest taboos of the Quincy's. At least of, you know, the Ect Quincy's, the pure Quincy's that are, like, part of, like, the Ishida family and everything. That is, like, the one thing you do not do, okay? So, Masaki, though, is, she's got some butterflies in her stomach, ladies and gentlemen. Well, she's got something else going on there, too, with the hollowification and all that. But, you know, mostly, I think she's like, wow, I really should have asked for his name. She didn't even ask for Isshin's name. She was just probably so stunned by the fact that there was a Shinigami there that was, like, actually nice, that she was like, wait a sec, I told you, like, the whole, like, oh, everything I've learned is maybe a lie kind of processing in Masaki's mind there. But anyway, we now are in the Soul Society, and Isshin is doing the same thing. He's thinking about Masaki, and he's like, man, hope she's okay. Maybe I should head back. I guess those rumors about Quincy still being alive were true. You know, it must have taken a lot of courage for her to save me. You know, she's really something. All right. So, you know, Isshin being Isshin, you know, he just kind of does what he wants. So he's just like, I should go back and see her. In the manga, there's a little bit of a funny scene here where he basically just leaves a note to Rangiku. Like, Rangiku walks into Isshin's office, and there's just a note there that says, hey, Rangiku, went back to the world of the living. See you later. Bye. And, you know, Rangiku gets really pissed and, like, crumples up the note, just like, that idiot, and, like, throws it against the wall. So, yeah. And we have Masaki here. Oh, yes, this. Okay, so last episode, I apologize. I actually was incorrect on that. I was trying to rationalize this whole arrangement as being less creepy than it really was. But no. Masaki and Ryukin are, in fact, related to one another. That is something that I forgot about or maybe blocked out. I'm not really sure. But, yeah. So the Kurosaki family is related to the Ishida family. I would imagine at this point, considering how all the Quincy's were annihilated, or a lot of the Quincy's were annihilated during the Purge 200 years ago, pretty much every Quincy clan at this point, if you have pure Quincy's, Ect Quincy's, they're probably all related in some way. And with the idea of Izumi Ishida, Ryuken's mom, kind of just like, all right, we need to have more pure Quincy blood in the family. So we're going to marry this pure Quincy Masaki to my son, who's a pure Quincy Ryuken. And yeah, they are technically cousins. So, yeah, this is a pretty messed up arrangement. Not unheard of. I mean, throughout history, there's been, arranged marriages through family members, to keep the bloodline pure. There's a lot of, royal families throughout history of the world that subscribe to those sort of practices. Obviously, not great. Not a good thing for Masaki here, and she's kind of being thrown into this. She really doesn't have a choice in the matter, so that also causes it to be a little bit, problematic. These are her two friends from high school, though. Kubo did give their names in one of the tankobons. This is, let's see, I think it's wait, no, that's somebody else. Shiho Dojima is off to the left of Masaki, and Kanon Ogura is to her right. They literally have no relevance whatsoever, but Kubo did give their names, so there they are. So they're walking home and just talking about the situation there. Her friends are kind of just like, yeah, but, Ryuken, he's pretty attractive, and you also live in that giant mansion. Something must be going on there. And then Masaki has to have the awkward, like, he's my cousin kind of mentality. But all right, I guess, sure. Anyway, Masaki has been having some issues lately, ever since she was attacked by the Hollow. She has, like, these little moments where she sort of blacks out momentarily, and the Hollow energy seems to be, like, encroaching on her soul. She accidentally bumps into a stranger just happening by, and it turns out, oh, it's actually Urahara! Okay, so yes, Urahara is living in Karakura. Actually, wait, is this Karakura Town? Is this Karakura Town or that other place? No, this is Karakura Town. Yeah, this is Karakura Town. So yeah, Urahara's been living here for probably around 80 years now, maybe a little bit more than that. I think Turn Back the Pendulum did not take place exactly 100 years ago. I think it took place like 110 years ago or something like that. So he's been in the world of living for about 100 years at this point, in exile from the whole events of Aizen and the Visors and everything like that. So, in typical Urahara fashion, he just kind of shows up whenever there's a problem. So, yeah, he's definitely there. Although this definitely gives you the impression that he didn't do this on purpose, that he really was just passing through, and it's just like, wait a second. Oh, that's not good. He's like, oh no, that girl has a touch of the holification. That's a problem. Okay, we should probably deal with that. All right, so then that's the end of 533, and then we literally cut to the opening titles. So that was literally like just the opening, or like the cold open of the episode. All right, we're going to cut through the opening here. God, this is so much easier just to scroll through this episode using this method than the other method I had. I'm sorry if you preferred the other method with like the screenshots, but like, my God, this is so much easier for me. All right, oh, that's just the inner stitch. Okay, cut. All right, here we go. All right, so Ishido residence. We have Ryuken welcoming Masaki home. However, she's headed off at the pass by Izumi Ishida, who is Ryuken's mom. And she has learned oh, I just noticed that she's wearing a Quincy necklace around. That's a cool little touch. I don't know if that's in the manga or not, but that's a neat little touch there. Anyway, so she immediately is aware of what happened the other night. She knows that a Hollow attacked and that she rescued a Shinigami, which is a big no-no in the Ishida family of the Quincy's. So she's very pissed, and she's like, I heard you fought a Hollow the other night. You only disgraced yourself by lying. Ryuken immediately realizes where she learned the information, because the only three people that knew about this were Masaki herself, Ryuken, and Kane Katagiri. I guess Isshin as well, but he's not here right now, obviously. The only people in the family that knew were Ryuken, Masaki, and Kane. So he immediately realizes who must have told her, because Ryuken and Masaki obviously didn't. So he's like, okay, I got to go talk to Kane right now about what's going on. Katagiri! Anyway, so the issue here is that, oh my, the issue here is that, of course, Izumi is all about the Ishida family and the propagation of the Ect Quincy blood, and so she's like, how dare you, risk all of that by going off to fight a Hollow? Do you know what could have happened to you? You could have been tainted by the Hollow, which is actually what ended up happening. So there's some issues here with Hollow power mixing with Quincy's, and how it actually taints them and they're no longer pure anymore. So we're going to get into that in in a little bit here, and it actually is probably something that did happen to Izumi right here, where she is, the implication is she was attacked by a hollow. We actually see the scar on her leg later, and that's the implication. So we'll get to that in a couple of scenes here. But anyway, now we have Ryukin and Kane, where, oh, this kind of looks like something different. But anyway, he's like, you know, I told you, why would you do that? And Miss Masaki sustained a wound from the Hollow's attack. So, you know, I had to inform your mother, because if she does not receive the proper treatment, the holy treatment or whatever, then therefore her bloodline would be tainted, and then the Quincy's would not have, you know, pure blood anymore. And like I said, it gets very kind of disturbing to talk about it in this context, but that's really what's happening here. And, you know, like, Kane Katagiri did not do it because she did not like Ryukin. Actually, the exact opposite. She really likes Ryukin, if not maybe loves Ryukin. Well, definitely loves him from what we're going to see in a moment here. And so, you know, the other night, Ryukin was telling her all about how, like, oh, you know, this is for the family, this is for the future of the Quincy's and all that, and I just want to make Masaki happy and everything. So even though Kane Katagiri is in love with Ryukin, she realizes that Masaki is also really important to Ryukin and to the family, and so she realized that, okay, she was bit by a hollow. Unless there's special treatment done, that's going to ruin the family, which is what I thought Ryukin really cared about, right? So that's why Kane told Ryukin's mom. There's a possibility that the future Ishida bloodline, it is everything to us. You also got to understand, from the perspective of this, I don't know how many Quincy families are left in the world of living after the Purge 200 years ago, but suffice to say, probably not very much. Probably not very many of the Quincy's remain. So it's like every single marriage, every child counts, like, because they're literally trying to build back their entire clan from scratch, essentially. There was probably only like maybe a handful of families way back 200 years ago that were managing to hide out and not get killed by the Shinigami. And so then they all decide to probably come together and try to lay low and try to slowly build back up the Quincy clan. And so, yeah, there's probably not a lot of other Echt Quincy's around in the world, and so that's why Kane was, like, so devoted to this, to the point where she would even go behind Ryukin's back and tell Izumi. And Ryukin, on the other hand, kind of understands it as well. He's not really that mad at Katagiri, because he realizes, like, that she's not really the problem here. The real issue is just, well, honestly, the direct issue is his mom, you know, causing this whole thing and the arranged marriage and everything to happen, and being so obsessed with the Echt Quincy blood. But, you know, it's kind of like Ryukin is really upset, and you can see his struggle and frustration with the whole scenario he finds himself in right now. Like, Ryukin honestly probably wishes he was never even born a Quincy, to be honest with you, because it's like the trouble that this is causing him, and this whole family dynamic now is just completely messed up, and he's just like, God, why do we have to suffer through this? You know, why me? But he realizes what's really happening here. So Masaki tries to come up with an explanation of just like, oh, it's not a big deal, Ryukin, I'm fine. Bam. Okay, so yeah, it turns out Masaki, spoiler alert, is not in fact fine. She's not doing too hot right now. So Ryukin's freaking out. He grabs her to take her away. He asks where Soken is. Oh god, yeah, that's also happening. So Masaki is developing a very disturbing hollow hole in her chest. You should probably get that looked at. You should probably get that checked. That doesn't look... God, the veins are just making it even more kind of just, like, gruesome. Like, ugh. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of times in the other series, you know, when a hollow hole developed, it's just kind of like literally a hole just gets, like, carved out on the body. The fact that Masaki is still alive, and it looks more of, like, an infection or, like, a disease. You know what I mean? That's just, like, this hole opening up in the middle of her chest. You know, like, the veins and arteries are around it. That's, like, ugh. Anyway, so Ryukin asks his mom, like, where's Dad at? And he's like, oh, we're trying to get in touch with him right now. He's still at the 5th field, I guess. So Ryukin just leaves with Masaki. Hearing Kyaku's away, and the idea is, I guess, he's going to find his dad, is where he's initially trying to go, because his father might actually be able to have some Quincy magic that might be able to heal Masaki. In the meantime, we see Izumi leaving, trying to, like, call out for her son, like, please come back, Ryukin, and we see her legs. And actually, you know what, now that I'm actually looking at her legs, those aren't her socks, her legs. Okay, so you see the scar on her left leg, that's very obvious, but her legs look pretty shriveled up even without that. You know, like her legs look pretty, like, I don't know, like they look like disproportionate to the rest of her body and really shriveled. So this is never really fully explained what the situation with Izumi is, but I have a theory. And this is the theory. Izumi and Soken were both pure Quincy's that then had Ryukin, who was also a pure Quincy. Ryukin was their firstborn son. And I guess they planned on having a lot more children that would also be pure Quincy's. However, Ryukin is an only child. From what we understand, he is an only child. So what I think happened is after Ryukin had been born, but before Izumi and Soken had a chance to have any more children, Izumi was attacked by a hollow. And that causes the scar on her leg and the damage, and that tainted her soul, so she's no longer a pure Quincy. And because that is such a big deal to her, her and Soken had no more children. Not that they couldn't have any more children, but they would not be pure Quincy's. They would be tainted with hollow spiritual pressure. So that's why they didn't have any more children. So Ryukin was their only child that was a pure Quincy. And that's why they're so dead set on marrying Ryukin and Masaki to have more children that are pure. Okay? So that's just my theory. That's the way I'm spinning it. And why Izumi Ishida is so obsessed with that. That's the best I really have there. But yeah, she was definitely attacked by a hollow at some point there. There's also a line here that's also kind of disturbing right there, that like when Izumi's calling out to Ryukin, like, you can't be with that thing. So like immediately, like she like stops referring to Masaki as a human being at this point. Like she is an abomination now. And that might actually be the same way Izumi views herself. Because Izumi, obviously, she comes off very cold, very stoic, not very nice to Masaki. And the wording right here is, you can't be with that thing, you know? So she probably views any Quincy that has been tainted by hollow spiritual pressure as an abomination that shouldn't exist. And that might very well include herself. And so most of her hatred might be directed at her own weakness and her own, the state that she got in after being attacked by a hollow. So, bottom line, Izumi Ishida really should go to therapy. But anyway, Ryukin has no idea what's going on. He's trying to get Masaki to his dad when all of a sudden a hollow tries to attack them, almost as if it was drawn to them. We'll cover that in a moment. But it's okay because Isshin shows up and slices the hollow right for... And he's like, oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, hey, Masaki, yeah, how you been? But yeah, not great, Isshin, not doing swell right about now, okay? You know, she's like, you know what, just give her an aspirin, she'll be fine. She'll be fine, give her an ibuprofen, that'll just close up the hollow hole, like, everything's fine, Ryukin, everything's good. Oh, hey, Isshin, how you been? Oh, my God, so, Isshin knows a little bit about, like, medical stuff. That's actually how he ended up starting the clinic. But that's basic, like, Soul Society, like, first aid. Like, he's not a member of Squad 4 or anything. He doesn't know what's going on here. But it's okay because, you know, this is Bleach, and when you don't know what's happening in Bleach and it involves hollows, yeah. Urahara shows up. That's how it works. There was a little scene here, though, that I really did want to highlight where Ryukin and Isshin have a little back and forth, which really sets the stage for the rest of their relationship. She broke the rules of a Quincy's to protect you, a Soul Reaper, so this is really your fault. It's not Isshin's fault, not really. Masaki is the one that chose to go and save him. Earlier on in the episode, Ryukin even wonders like whether or not he should have just stopped Masaki by force back at the mansion before she left to go, you know, save Isshin when it was raining out. Maybe Ryukin should have just like stopped her by force, and so we wouldn't even be in this situation right now. But he didn't, and now he's there, and he's really just trying to redirect his rage at somebody. And Isshin is like the perfect person, you know, like, why does Masaki have to go through all this? It's because of you. And Isshin though does feel like it's not really Isshin's fault. Like it is not. But Isshin does feel bad and guilty that it is his fault. So he's a very genuine person as well. And if he does something wrong, he's going to do his damnedest to make it right. Like, that's just Isshin's character right there. Very true blue, kind of genuine kind of guy. So they have to figure out what's going on. Urahara shows up, and this leads into another rain transition. That's cool. So we get to we have the Daten here. We have Quincy and Hollow relationship. And we also have, what's the other one? Did I skip one? Oh, and the Ishida family. So, yeah, I really wish these would be... I mean, I've seen some of these. Fans have actually went back and translated these in English, but these are not available translated even in the English dub. The English dub of the Thousand Year Blood War is out. I think episode 9 is going to be coming out this Friday. Yeah, they don't have the translations of that even then. I've seen a few that were fan translated, and they do include a lot of information that's left out of the manga. But yeah, maybe if there's like an English dub Blu-ray release or something, maybe they'll translate these. But I really hope they do, the Daten cards. Okay, so we cut inside of Masaki's hollow hole, and we see like her spiritual body being thing. Now, I actually had to cut some scenes here out of this because she's naked in these shots, and it's a lot more explicit in the manga. In fact, this was one of the scenes in the manga that I was like, how the hell are they going to animate this? It's not this scene in particular. It's a scene that happens later in chapter 536. Right before Isshin, or right after, I should say, right after Isshin shows up and saves Masaki in her inner world, Masaki is kind of there, naked, and she just looks at Isshin, and she's like, oh my god, hey, how you doing? You're the Shinigami from the other night. And she's like really happy and bubbly and like throwing her arms up, but she's completely naked. And you know what? Like, in the manga, it's like, Kubo goes, like, he just draws the boobs. Like, they're just there. Like, Masaki is just straight up naked. Like, there's an outline of nipple. Like, I remember reading that chapter, and I'm just like, how the hell did this end up in Jump? You know what I mean? Because look. Shonen Jump has a lot of fan service. Like, no one will argue that. Like, remember, like, in that episode, or the chapter, I guess I should say, of Black Clover, where all of the female squad members are, like, in that giant bath? And so there's like a double-page spread in Black Clover of like 10 female characters that are all naked. Except in that case, you see a lot, but like, oh, the steam from the hot springs is like covering up the key points. You know what I mean? So that was really intense. But like, this is like might be the most explicit example where in that chapter, Kubo is just like, here they are, you know what I mean? And then, yeah, so they cut all of that out of this episode. They add this glow effect around Masaki's entire body, and which is a good thing. And then they also just cut that scene out with Masaki like jumping up and down in front of Isshin completely naked. That was a good move. Yeah, because that's like straight up like seinen territory right there. I'm surprised that was in a Shonen Jump magazine, not like Seinen Jump. There's not a Seinen Jump, but you know what I mean? Anyway, so Masaki's there just kind of floating in the void, and she's like falling down. And she's like, is there somebody there that needs me? And then there's a giant hollow that like appears in her inner world that's about to like consume her. Okay, and so that's like, it's symbolic of what Masaki is going through right now. Her transformation, her holification, so to speak, okay? So that's what Masaki's dealing with right now. So we cut to the Urahara Shoten, his little shop here, and he first has to explain who the hell he is. Like, I am Urahara Kisuke. I was banished from the Soul Society 100 years ago. A lot of crazy stuff happened. I'm not going to get into it here. Isshin does know about him because he's sort of like one of the most like prominent criminals in Soul Society history. So he's like, oh, you're Kisuke Urahara. Ryukit has no idea who he is, but he's just like, look, I don't care about your backstory, as interesting as it sounds, and I also don't care about what your Bankai is. By the way, what is your Bankai? Actually, it's not important. You gotta save Masaki! And Kisuke is like, well, look, here's the thing. I could save her, but I never said she was going to go back to normal. In fact, she can't, and I'm sorry about that. But I can save her life. I can figure out a way to stabilize her. But we're going to have to do some unorthodox means here, okay? All right, so this is where we get to, I think this is chapter 535. I think I called it in the... when I used to, title my Bleach reviews different things. Chapter 535, right? Everything But the Rain, Defenders. Okay, I think I called it Urahara Explains It All, because this entire chapter is basically just Urahara giving one long expositional monologue about how holification works. Okay, so I'm not going to go beat for beat through all of it. I'm just going to give you, like, the abridged kind of idea, all right? So, essentially, Urahara knows a lot about holification because of the situation with the visors, and we even have a flashback to turn back the pendulum right here when Mashiro and Kensei were both holified. They were the first ones to be holified. They attacked the rest of the visors, and then they became visors as well, okay? So we already know about that. Holification is the attempt of adding a holo power or holo Ryatsu to a Shinigami to create an even powerful being. The problem with that is whenever a holo Ryatsu is added to a Shinigami, if they're weak enough, if the Shinigami's weak enough, they'll just die, like right there on the spot. If they're strong enough, like captain or vice captain class, they will survive, but they'll kind of become berserkers. You know what I mean? They'll be just coming like crazy berserkers that'll just go insane with rage, okay? Now, and that will eventually lead to the soul being destroyed as well. However, Urahara did come up with a vaccine here. He came up with a way to save her. And it's shown right here. And yeah, Urahara has a name for it, but I don't know if YouTube would let me say that. Soul destruction. Soul self-destruction. Let's call it that. Anyway, yeah, you need to create a strong counteracting force. Now, in the case with Shinigami being attacked by Hollows, right here, okay. Soul Reapers are the opposite of Quincy's. Hollows are the opposite of humans. All right, that's very important. So, with the case with Shinigami being attacked, Urahara created a vaccine made out of human souls and a Quincy's light arrow, okay? Because Soul Reapers and Quincy's are at opposite ends. If you introduce Quincy Ryatsu into a Shinigami, then it will balance out their souls, counteract the holification, and they won't die. That's the implication of how the visors were able to not die, okay? Urahara injected that vaccine into each of the visors, and they were able to stabilize and not immediately die. They still had to go into their individual inner worlds and subjugate their hollows in order to fully control their hollow abilities. So, like, obviously, like Shinji using his hollow mask, he still had to go fight an inner hollow, but this is something that's different. Now, if you're asking about Ichigo, what about Ichigo? He didn't have to have a vaccine. Yeah, because Ichigo's special. Ichigo is unique, okay? We'll get to Ichigo, all right? But he was born with these abilities, so his situation's very different. With the case with the other visors like Kensei, Shinji, Rose, Lisa, Hachi, Mashiro, everybody else, Love, you know, they were already pure Shinigamis that were then attacked and introduced Holo Ryatsu, so they had to have this vaccine, okay? Now, the problem is the vaccine's not going to work on Masaki, because Masaki's not a Soul Reaper that was attacked with Holo Ryatsu. Masaki is a Quincy that was attacked by a Holo. And Quincy Ryatsu and Holo Ryatsu, even though it says Soul Reaper and Quincy's are opposite, Holo Ryatsu is like straight up poison to Quincy's. This is also why Kaname Tozen was so upset at the end of the last episode. Like, I can't believe our best laid plans. We made that Holo and it shows a Quincy instead, because I think Kaname was under the impression that a Quincy that was attacked by whites and had hollow powers introduced into her, the Quincy would just die. And so it wouldn't really lead to anything all that unique for our research. But then Aizen said, hey, hold on here, Kaname. Let's just see where this goes, okay? And I imagine Aizen in his infinite wisdom was like, I was expecting this. You know what I mean? So they have to do something a little different here for Masaki. And in that case, Urahara reveals a special Gigai that he created. He says, I created it from a human soul. Don't ask where Urahara gets his human souls. But I created this from a human soul. And once the soul enters it, they become a human. So if a Shinigami enters this Gigai, they will become a human. This is also, I believe, kind of the same kind of Gigai, or same type anyway, that he gave Rukia at the beginning of the series. Also, I love the fact that they're in a candy shop right now. Like, they're having this really serious conversation about Masaki's life, and there's just, like, a bunch of, like, Pocky on the side, you know? Wouldn't it be funny as hell if, like, Isshin is, like, listening to this really long explanation about holification and Quincy's and stuff, and Isshin just kind of spies the Pocky off to the right and just kind of, like, carefully reaches over and, like, grabs a box and is just eating Pocky or whatever while this is going on. But anyway, yeah, it's just funny. They're in a candy shop right now. Okay, so here's the situation. What Isshin's going to have to do, the only way that they're going to be able to save Masaki is Isshin's going to have to enter this Gigai and stay connected and tie his soul to Masaki's soul and be by her side until she dies. Now, Ryukin figures this out almost immediately. before Isshin does, that like, oh crap, this isn't good, because Ryuken's perspective is Isshin is not going to have any benefits here. He's not going to have any positives. There's nothing in it for him. You're literally asking a captain of the Gotei 13 to abandon his post, abandon his Shinigami powers, live as a human to protect another human who he just met. So Ryuken's like, there is no way Isshin's going to agree to this. There's nothing in it for him. However, we've already discussed Isshin is a very genuine human being, or Shinigami, I should say, and he agrees. He says, I have a lot of regrets, but so what? If I let the person who saved my life die because I couldn't just make this decision, I would, my future self would laugh at me. So, yeah, this isn't even a question for Isshin. Obviously, he's not going to be like, yeah, okay, I'm totally cool with abandoning my post and becoming a human being. Like, obviously, he regrets some shit. Like, oh, man, I'm not going to be able to really talk to Rangiku and Toshiro and tell him about everything. Although he is aware that Toshiro is going to be a good captain of Squad 10. So he could probably, like, rest easy with that. Like, at least there's somebody that's probably, honestly, more qualified for the position that will be able to carry on Squad 10, so he doesn't need to initially worry about that anyway, right? So he knows the future of the squad will be fine, but still, like, this is giving up part of his entire identity. He won't be able to use his Shinigami powers anymore. His Zanpakuto, Kido, all of that will go away, but he does it because of Masaki. Urahara also brings up earlier, he says that for as long as Masaki lives, no, it will forever be passed down to her descendants. Okay, so this holification ability isn't just for Masaki. If they have children, it will also be passed down to Masaki's kids as well, as we saw with Ichigo, and to a lesser extent, Yuzu and Karin also have spiritual pressure as well. But it's all from the same two parents. Ichigo received the bulk of it just because he was the firstborn child, but I'm sure Yuzu and Karin have a mixture of some Shinigami and Hollow abilities and Quincy powers as well. We just haven't really explored that in the story. But anyway, yeah, Isshin agrees, and they decide to perform the operation. And so we shall begin the procedure. We cut back inside to Masaki's inner world. Like I said, they added this really bright filter over Masaki's, like, entire body. So that's that. And then Isshin shows up, stops the giant hollow body, uses Getsuga Tensho, actually. Now that I'm here, you won't lay a finger on her. Getsuga Tensho! And you can see here very clearly that Isshin's Getsuga Tensho is more fire-based than Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho. The only other time we saw him use Getsuga was against Aizen at Fate Karakura, and it kind of looked like a normal Getsuga. It kind of looked like Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho, honestly. So here, I like that they added the difference there, that, Isshin's is more fire-based, and so he uses that to destroy the hollow inside of Masaki, the symbolic representation of her struggle, and now he will always forever remain by her side. So there we go. And then we just immediately cut. That was, right here is where the scene would have happened in the manga. So they cut that. And then we just cut back to outside of Masaki's body, where she's like, oh, okay, everything's good now. All right, we're all good. And there's Isshin in the Gigai as a human being. It's a good thing that Isshin just had Urahara had some extra clothing lying around in Isshin's size. He's a fan of the V-necks, you could see. And, Urahara's just like, we did it! Victory! Yay! And there's this funny little scene here where Masaki's, like, now daydreaming about Isshin, because there's Isshin on the outside, but there's also, like, there's, like, a Soul Reaper version of Isshin, like, in her soul now. So, she's just like, oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, what's your name, Shinigami? So, yeah, she's like I said, butterflies there. She has a little crush on Isshin. And so there's that. So Ryuken left, though. Oh, look at Ryuken. Oh, poor Ryuken. Oh, my God. So, Masaki's alive, that's good, but now I think Ryuken at this point is just, like, questioning his entire life. He's just like, oh god, why did I have to be in this situation? Why do I have to be born a Quincy? Why do I have to be in this, Masaki's now with Isshin, and I don't know what Ryuken's feeling right now. I definitely feel like Ryuken ended up being happy that Masaki and Isshin, like, got married, because Masaki very clearly is in love with Isshin. Isshin very clearly fell in love with Masaki. So I don't think he's upset about that or anything. I think he's just upset about, like, the whole it's just everything. It's everything involving the Quincy's and his parents and the situation he got thrust into, and now meeting Isshin. I think it's just a lot to process for Ryuken right now. You know what I mean? So he runs into Katagiri on the way home, And she asks him, did you have to leave Miss Masaki behind? Now, okay, Ryuken might be a little bit more upset from the fact that Ryuken can no longer, Masaki's no longer part of his life now. Okay, and he genuinely did like Masaki. Not in that way, not in, the romantic way, in the kind of just, hey, we're all Quincy's here, we're going through a really rough time, and, I'm there for you kind of sort of relationship as, a family member, okay? And so he had to leave her behind, and I think Ryuken's realizing that, yeah, Masaki's not going to be part of my life anymore. So he's a little upset about that. And the fact that he had to leave her with a Soul Reaper, which is something, like I said, every Quincy is pretty much taught since they were born, don't trust Soul Reapers, don't interact with them. And now he had to leave Masaki, somebody very precious to him, in the hands of a stranger, of a complete stranger of a Soul Reaper he just met earlier that afternoon. So there's a little bit of that going on. You can tell my mother that Ryuken is unqualified to protect the Quincy's. I'm a failure to our entire clan. But Kane gives Ryuken some very, encouraging words here. I will not leave you by yourself, young master. Have you forgotten? It's my entire duty to serve you. So we have a little bit of a flashback with Kane. This is when Kane and Ryuken were kids. And I imagine that Katagiri got brought to the household to basically be Ryuken's personal maid, I guess, or personal assistant, or whatever, however the Ishida family operates. They were together ever since they were kids, basically, They were living under the same roof. And so Kane, started developing feelings for Ryuken, and she expresses them here to him. She doesn't actually say that, I love you, Ryuken. But she says, when you are sad, it tears my heart apart. Which, she's in love with Ryuken. That's a very clear thing. It's a very emotional moment right there. And it's at that point that Ryuken, that's enough. Let's go home. Okay, I was going to say, that's at the point where Ryuken comforts her and hugs her, and it's just I love you too, and then they go off and just get married and have a Ryu. But no, Ryuken is still Ryuken, but, it ends up there eventually, you know what I mean? Very emotional scene there. Very, very nice scene there. And I'm sure they're going to go home, and they're going to discuss this at a later date, and, it all works out. Until something else happens, but we'll get to that point. We're still in the flashback. So now we're cutting away into the future a little bit. Masaki graduates high school. She leaves the Ishida family. All of the Quincy's decided, yeah, that's the right decision. She was mixed with a hollow, so she's unpure now, so she has to leave the family. So that's pretty brutal. But anyway, she starts college. Isshin opens up the clinic. Masaki, while she's in college, kind of stops by every now and then to flirt. To basically flirt and tease Isshin with the white coat and everything. Urahara also helps out Isshin with, a lot of stuff in the world of living. Isshin knows a little bit about, healing, because he's a Shinigami. He learned that in the Reijutsu Academy. He mentions it's, one of the only things he could actually use in the world of living to, help people. But also, Isshin has no idea how to get, a business loan. You know what I mean? You gotta pass, medical tests and stuff. Not medical tests, actual medical, school tests to open your own clinic. Maybe Urahara doctored that. He's like, oh, yeah, don't worry, Isshin. I'll forge all the documents. I'll get you your own clinic. I'll fill out the housing loan. Don't worry about it. It's we'll make it work. We'll make it work. So Urahara probably did all that kind of stuff in the background. So Isshin could just pretty much open his own clinic. He really took to Hawaiian shirts. That's one thing about the Shinigami. They don't really have a very diverse wardrobe, so Isshin was probably really happy about the copious amounts of Hawaiian shirts in the world of living. So, they begin to date, and you know what? This is such a nice little, we add some extra scenes here in the anime, where, aw, it's so cute, it's so wholesome, guys, it's just, they're just two goofballs that fell in love with each other. You know what I mean? It's nice. They're going on a little lunch date together. They have their little lunch boxes. Isshin's eating a rice ball, and he's getting rice all over his face, and Masaki's teasing him. And it's oh, that's so cute. They go to see a movie together. Isshin's there watching the movie, and he's like, all right, whatever. He's like, it's a romance kind of thing. But he brings up a line here that in the movie, there's an old man that compares his dying wife to the sun. And Masaki is just bawling her eyes out over here about that. And, oh my god, we don't see a lot of the movie in the manga. I don't think we see the movie at all. So they actually add some scenes here. By the way, the soundtrack while this is all playing, very, very sad. Anyway, we have the scene here where Isshin compares Masaki to the sun. And this was something that was shown in the poem in the last episode. But it's like, she was like the sun. She attracts everything and she forgives everything. I was just happy to be spun around her in her orbit. Now, in the manga, there's a nice little, like, cutesy little diagram of Masaki literally being at the center of the universe and, like, Isshin, like orbiting around her. I kind of like this version better, where Masaki's on the top of a hill, like they're out on a date, and the sun is going down, and the sun is just completely illuminating her from behind, and then she's just smiling and reaching out her hand, and then Isshin grabs it. And then that's where he ends off. I mean, there was a lot of other stuff, but, you know, Isshin's just going to cut out that, you know. And then it's actually like, yeah, so we had this awesome date, and we went up to this hill, and, you know, I took your mom's hand, and then you were born, so you can probably connect the dots on that, okay? Yeah, all right. But anyway, yeah, so Ichigo was born, and Isshin's like, I probably don't have to tell you about the rest. You know about your own life. You know, Rukia showed up, gave her Shinigami powers to you. You awakened yours with the help of hers. You trained with Urahara to gain your Zanpakuto, your battles in the Soul Society, your Hollow awakened, you got Bankai. While Ichigo was training in the Soul Society, and when he unlocked Bankai and his Hollow powers, that was when Isshin's pressure could no longer contain the Hollow. So even after Ichigo was born and Masaki had died later when Ichigo was 8, Isshin still did not have his Shinigami powers. It was still tethered to Ichigo. However, the powers just grew so strong that Isshin could no longer contain them, and it snapped. So that's when Ichigo's Hollow really started going out of control, but also at the same time, Isshin got his powers back. And then we see that at the beginning of the Arrancar arc, when he shows up and kills Grand Fisher, when he had his powers back, okay? And Urahara shows up and he's like, oh, this is the first time you've been a Shinigami for 20 years. You know, that's when that happened, okay, after Ichigo trained in the Soul Society. So, anyway, that's why he got his powers back. Now, Isshin is like, look, I'm not going to go through every little moment of your life. You know your life better than I do. But here's the thing, Ichigo. There's still one more thing about your past that you don't have the full story, and I need to explain that to you. So he says, you know, it's 9 years from today, which I guess this episode takes place on June 15th. Oh, no, June 17th. Sorry, June 17th. I get June 15th because Ichigo's name is Ichigo 15, so I thought it was June 15th. He's born on July 15th. It's June 17th. It was like June 17th, Memories in the Rain, is the day your mom died. 9 years from this date right here, okay? Which I guess that also means Ichigo is 17. Yeah, Ichigo's 17, I guess about to turn 18 in this episode. Anyway, so we get the title card, and then we actually cut to the ending credits, and we have a very long ending credits scene here, where we actually have the shot of how Masaki died. So I really love, by the way, the layout of this backstory where everything's bathed in yellow. It's like in the late afternoon when the sun is setting, but it's raining, but some of the sun can still go through, and it becomes like this sickly sort of yellow color, if you've ever seen that. That kind of is a nice little backdrop for this. So this is the day Masaki died. Now, the story that we got from this before was that Masaki was walking home with Ichigo after he was training at the karate dojo with Tatsuki. Grand Fisher showed up. Grand Fisher used his ability to pretend to be a girl, like a little girl about to drown in the river. Ichigo, at this point, being so young, did not actually know. He couldn't distinguish between the ghosts and real people, because he hadn't learned that yet. So he assumed a real girl was about to drown in the river, so Ichigo runs down to go save her. Masaki, of course, chases after her son, and Masaki falls down, and then Ichigo just wakes up with his dead mother just on top of him. You know what I mean? Like something had just killed her, and Ichigo was obviously very traumatized from that. The story that we find out during the Substitute arc is that Grand Fisher used that lure of the girl to get Masaki to get close to him, and then Grand Fisher attacked, killed Masaki. Now, the situation, though, is that Masaki was a Quincy, and she was an Act Quincy and had Blut Vina. Just because she was merged with a Hollow, she had Hollow Ryatsu in her, it was being suppressed by Isshin. She still had all of her Quincy abilities. She could still summon the Holy Bows, Holy Arrows, Blut Vina. She had all that stuff, and she wasn't just an average Quincy either. She was powerful, okay? And Isshin says that even with Grand Fisher's, subterfuge ability, with like pretending to be this little girl and having like the lore and everything and hiding his spiritual pressure, even taking that into account, There's no way that Masaki should have lost to Grand Fisher in a fair fight. Isshin goes on to say that she shouldn't even have had a scratch on her. She should have been able to honestly do the same thing she did with White, like have Grand Fisher try to attack her, use Blut Vina, block the attack, boom, headshot, and then just finish the fight right there. That should have been how it would have went. However, it didn't. There's also, by the way, an extra scene in the manga that they cut out here where Isshin said, hey, look, I didn't have my Shinigami powers, but if I was even under the impression that Masaki was in a little bit of danger, I would have went. It also kind of implies that Isshin, even though Urahara says that Isshin would not be able to even see spirits anymore, Isshin still was able to maybe sense Grand Fisher. Because in the manga, there's that weird, like, I kind of sense Grand Fisher and Masaki's spiritual pressure, but he was still in the human Giga. I guess he could still sense, but he couldn't see anything, right? If that makes sense, I don't know. Anyway, he says, look, even though I didn't have any powers, I would have still rushed to her side. I would have rushed to do anything I could. But I really felt that Masaki could handle this. Like, the difference in their abilities was night and day. And I'm sure in all the years that Masaki and Isshin had been dating, and then eventually got married, and then eventually had, you know, Ichigo and the kids, Yuzu and Karin, Masaki had probably killed a lot of hollows in the intermediate. I can imagine Isshin and Masaki going on a date at an amusement park, having a great time, eating some cotton candy. All of a sudden, a hollow shows up on the Ferris wheel, and Masaki's just like, oh, boom! And he's like, what was that, Masaki? Oh, nothing, dear. You know, I'm sure Masaki's going around killing hollows all the damn time. This is probably not an unusual occurrence for her, okay? So anyway, right as Grand Fisher attacks Masaki. This is like the worst possible timing. None of this was planned, by the way. It wasn't like Grand Fisher was working along with Yuha or anything. But Grand Fisher goes to attack Masaki. She goes to try to activate her Blut Vina, and it's actually a cool scene in the episode where the Blut Vina actually, like, flickers off. Like, she's about to activate it, and it's like, whoop, 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 and then it just disappears. And then Masaki's like, oh, shit. And then she gets cut and then get killed. And Ichigo's like, well, what do you mean she lost her Quincy powers? She had to lose her Quincy powers at that exact time, at that exact moment, on that exact day? What happened? And at that point, that's when Isshin explains what happened 9 years ago. Auswalen. All right. I always called it Ashwalen, but apparently that is really wrong. So the way I had to write this down phonetically. Auswalen. Okay, I'm just going to go with that. So it is the holy selection that Yuha is capable of. It's the selection process. So we see a scene here where Ryukin is picking up the old journal that Uryu just left in the river, I guess, after reading it. And it explains in there that there's a story of a sealed Quincy king. And after 900 years, this sealed king will regain his body. After 90 years, he will regain his intelligence or his mind. After 9 years, he will regain his power. So 9 years ago was when Yuha began the phase of reclaiming his power. And part of that is using the Auswalen to take all of the power from the unpure Quincy's back into himself. This included Masaki, because Masaki had been attacked by White and had her spiritual powers tainted. So that's why he absorbed her powers. Also, he absorbed the powers of Katagiri. Katagiri right here also lost her life. She didn't die right there on the spot, though, because Masaki kind of lost her powers at, like, the worst possible instance. And so she died right away from Grand Fisher's attack. She lost her powers, and then she was already very weak and sickly, so she basically went into a coma for 3 months, and then she died after that. Here in the episode, I think it kind of just implies she died right away, but in the manga, she died a little bit later. So this is a nice little scene, though. We don't see that. We do see a picture of Kane in the manga, but it's very at a distance, and I think it's just a picture of her, not a picture of her and little baby Uryu. So there we go. We have a nice little mother and son picture there. Isn't that nice? So yeah, that's how Masaki died, because she couldn't use her powers and Grand Fisher killed her. And, Ichigo asks, well, how the hell is Yuha able to just do all that? And is it because he's their king? Is like, yes. Who is Yuha anyway? Yuha is the father of the Quincy's. All the Quincy's started from his bloodline, and the blood of him flows in every single Quincy. That means, of course, Ichigo, being the son of a Quincy, also has Yuha's blood in him. And this is when Ichigo has, like, a moment where it's just like, you know, it's like, wait a second, and then he flashes back to everything, and, like, you know, all the words that Yuha said to him in the battle. He's like, you don't know about anything yourself, do you, Ichigo Kurosaki? And then Ichigo realizes, oh my god, I'm a Quincy, you know, and so there he goes. My son born in the dark. Okay, so Ichigo is now on the same page here, but he's not freaking out about it. He's actually pretty chill with it. He's like, okay, I understand now. I get it. You know, it's not like being a Quincy is anything to be, like, ashamed of or anything like that. It's just I didn't know about my lineage. I had no idea who I was. I had no idea about this stuff involving Mom. Okay? Which, by the way, I guess Isshin or Ichigo have to tell this story to Yuzu and Karin at some point. I mean, it would be kind of a dick move to just not tell the other children about it, Masaki's other kids. So I guess when they get old enough, then Isshin will sit down with them and explain this entire story to Yuzu and Karin, I suppose. Anyway, Ichigo's like, thanks, Dad. And he's just like, yup. And so they walk outside, and it's dawn, daybreak, and the rain has stopped finally. And then we see Ikumi there. We see Ikumi Unajiya. We see Ichigo's boss there to deliver Ichigo's combat pass that he left at her place. So here we go. It's also kind of a funny scene because Isshin's there in the background, but Ikumi cannot see Isshin. So there's this scene right here where Ikumi hands the combat pass to Ichigo, and then Ichigo immediately is like, thank you, Miss Ikumi. Dad, I'm leaving now. And it's like, from Ikumi's perspective, she would have no idea. Like, Ichigo's like, thank you, Ikumi. Dad, I'm leaving now. And then Ikumi's like, what? Huh? There's no one here. She's like, okay, I guess you're shouting inside. Whatever. Okay. You know, so that's kind of funny there. Well, anyway, he's like, I'm heading back now. I'm going. And then, boom, that's the proper end of the episode. And that'll lead into the season, or the Core 1 finale, mid-season finale, Bleach episode 13. And so we get the poem here. This poem is actually read by Zangetsu. I believe the world is full of danger. I want to protect you from it. Only because inside me is the same impulse as the danger. Bleach, number 13, The Blade is Me. So yeah, that's the episode. Pretty crazy stuff there. Of course they had to pick the one shot that does kind of have Masaki. Yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, next episode will be the final episode, and we're also going to have a very special guest on in the next episode. I'm just going to spoil it now, whatever. The guest for Bleach 13, BAN-KAST number 13, will be Mr. Tomo. That's right. You guys requested Mr. Tomo. Pretty much everybody did. Yeah, I wanted James to be the first guest, you know, because we talked about Bleach way back in the day. And we did some collabs together. But after James, like, everybody was like, Mr. Tomo, Mr. Tomo. I've talked to him. Next episode, we're going to try to film it next week. Or maybe not if that doesn't work because, you know, holidays and everything like that. But it will be out, you know, in January. We'll have Bleach episode 13, the finale of Core number 1. And Core number 2 will resume in July of 2023. There will also be a lot of other Bleach content on the BAN-KAST channel in the meantime. So subscribe to that. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking, signing out. Later, everyone.